Hello there everyone, and welcome to my latest Fallout 4 build, the Pilot. Before I get into this build, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and hit that little bell icon to receive notifications for whenever I upload a new video. The Pilot is the only build out there that seeks to maximise the use of vertibirds within Fallout 4. If you want to control the skies and slaughter your enemies from the air, then this build is for you. The Pilot has Strength 4, Perception 4, Endurance 1, Charisma 3, Intelligence 9, Agility 1, and Luck 7. Strength is at 4 simply so that we can get the Heavy Gunner perk once we grab the bobblehead. Obviously, a pilot needs to be fairly perceptive, and having a decent perception will also make that accuracy decent at short to mid range. Endurance is a dump stat. You don't want to be taking too much direct damage with this build, so you shouldn't need too many hit points. Charisma has been put to 3 for us to get the incredible Lone Wanderer perk. It also shows that although the pilot at first seems fairly charming, she isn't the most sociable person and may not always get on with others. Intelligence is the highest stat at 9. The pilot is an incredibly intelligent individual, and in terms of gameplay, this allows us to level rapidly. Agility is the second dump stat of the build. The pilot spent a lot of time either sat at a desk or sat piloting a plane, so she isn't the most agile person. Luck is at a hefty 7. This will help us play as a critical hit character whilst we're on the ground, meaning we can fight effectively both in the air and whilst we're not airborne. The essential perks for this build are Heavy Gunner, Lone Wanderer, Gunslinger, and Critical Banker. Heavy Gunner will make you deal a ton more damage whilst in the air, by upgrading the damage the minigun dishes out. With this perk you will have a far easier time killing enemies whilst airborne. Lone Wanderer works really well for both compensating the low survivability of the build, and also for increasing damage further. Gunslinger will keep your damage high whilst you're not in the air. I felt that a pistol suited this build better than any other weapon, as it's easy to carry around and doesn't get in the way whilst flying. Critical Banker lets you deal with dangerous enemies far faster than you normally would. Build up criticals on the weak enemies, and then whenever you face a challenge, you can unleash all of your stored critical hits. The recommended perks that I have included are Better Criticals, Grim Reaper Sprint, Demolition Expert, Science, and Nerd Rage. Better Criticals will tie into Critical Banker and help you kill those tougher enemies in fewer hits. Grim Reaper's Sprint makes up for the low agility of this character by helping refill your action points on kills and VATs. At the 3rd rank you also get the chance to refill a critical hit whenever you kill an enemy. I included Demolition Expert mostly for the early game. I found that having this perk near the beginning of the game helped give the build some nice damage to help deal with enemies, without relying on an upgraded laser pistol or through using up all your minigun ammo. Science is ideal for upgrading your laser pistol, but you may not need it. If you get lucky with finding heavily upgraded laser pistols whilst out and about, you won't need to do much modding, but you may want to grab the perk just to make things easier for you. Nerd Rage is a really helpful perk to have for any build with high intelligence, as it provides you with extra damage output, damage resistance, and a slow time effect when your health drops low. This is great for getting you out of tough situations by either killing the final enemies, or for giving you time to run away out of the danger. The role-playing perks are Scrapper and Robotics Expert. Scrapper isn't really needed, as you don't do much modding, but I would suggest making the settlement at Boston Airport your base of operations, and building it as a luxury location to rest in after a hard day flying around. The Scrapper perk will make it easier for you to build your settlement by getting rare materials from weapons you pick up on your travels. Robotics Expert helps to add to the intelligence of this build, and also highlights her technical knowledge. Although not having too many practical purposes, it is handy to have for the Automatron DLC. The pilot was always an astoundingly intelligent woman. She left school with top marks in all of her subjects, including law, engineering, and physics. She originally went into the legal sector for work, and despite being a successful lawyer, she didn't find it particularly satisfying as a career. She desired something that was more thrilling than spending hours sorting through paperwork and representing others in court. After some time looking into her different options, she decided that she wanted to attempt to become a pilot. She made a large amount of money from her legal work, which meant she was able to afford flying lessons. Her intellect meant that she had no trouble grasping the theory of how to fly, and she seemed to also possess some natural talent for it. Once she felt satisfied with her ability, she began working towards becoming a licensed pilot. After totaling more than enough hours in the air, she did her written exam and, as always, passed with flying colours. She applied for a job as a pilot for Skylines Air and worked for them for several years happily. Although more exciting than her legal work, the pilot eventually found herself once again becoming bored with her day-to-day life. It was at this time that she noticed the military had started appearing regularly around the airports she worked at. She knew that there was a war going on, but she could tell that this wasn't just routine procedure. It wasn't long before she was approached by several high-ranking members of the military, asking her if she was willing to help the US Army field test a prototype flying vehicle they were working on. Seeing no reason to decline, she said yes and began her training as a vertibird pilot. She underwent incredibly taxing training requirements, challenging her both physically and mentally. Eventually though, she was ready to enter the pilot seat. After lifting off and having a few seconds of stable flight, she knew that this was what she wanted to do with her life. Progressing slowly through the controls, she made sure that the aircraft was flying stable and then was instructed to speed test the vehicle. As she flew forwards at a faster and faster rate, she began to feel that something was wrong. One of the propellers had fallen out of sync and was causing the vertibird to drag to the side. The pilot attempted to stabilise the aircraft to the best of her abilities, but there was no way to safely land it. Instead, she focused on reducing speed as much as possible, before crash landing a short distance away from the testing area. Upon impact, the vertibird suffered immense damage, leaking fuel, showering debris and setting alight. Despite being both bruised and shaken from the accident, the pilot was quick enough to see the fuel leak, and knew she had to get as far away as she could. The vertibird had landed mostly on its side, and she tried opening the door above, but it was stuck. She kicked the door repeatedly as hard as she possibly could, until it came loose, and then she crawled out of the cockpit. As soon as her feet touched solid ground, she began sprinting away. Unfortunately, a few seconds later, the fire reached the fuel leak, and the vertibird exploded, showering the area in metal. The pilot felt a sharp pain impact her in the back, and felt the world slow down around her. She carried on running for a few seconds, but ended up blacking out as she fled the crash site. She woke up an unknown amount of time later in hospital, and was informed that the part of one of the propellers had struck her in the spine, and that she was lucky to be alive. Apparently a soldier had come across her, and carried her from a testing ground to the hospital. As she went through recovery, the same soldier regularly visited her to check on how she was doing. The damage had come close to paralysing her, and she struggled to walk for a long time. Thanks to the help of both the doctors and the constant encouragement from the soldier, she eventually regained full use of her legs. As you may have guessed, the soldier and the pilot became very close during this time, and it wasn't long before they decided to leave the army, get married, and settle down in Sanctuary Hills. The pilot will be joining the Brotherhood of Steel. Upon seeing the Pridwin and the vertibirds on board, she will immediately decide who she is siding with. Feel free to help out the other factions early on, but you will ultimately want to stick with the Brotherhood in order to dominate the skies. This build won't use any companions, as a lone wanderer is needed in order to compensate for low armor value and hit points. You could grab Dance as a companion if you really wanted to, but I would advise against it. There are two main weapons for this build, Righteous Authority and a minigun. Mod out Righteous Authority to be the best possible laser pistol you can make. Being a lucky weapon, it will help you build criticals faster and also pump out more damage when you use your stored critical hits. The minigun will be your heavy hitting weapon, and you will want to keep an eye out for legendary variants of it. In addition to carrying around a minigun, you will also use the minigun mounted on the side of vertibirds to take down enemies from above. You'll also want a large supply of vertibird signal grenades to call vertibirds to your location and help you move around the map. The armour for this build will be the bomber jacket and yellow flight helmet. These items provide very little in the way of resistances, but you will get an additional point of perception from a yellow flight helmet. As you spend a large amount of time in vertibirds with this build, you won't need to worry too much about armour, and these items were chosen purely for the purpose of looking good and suiting the character. Spend most of your time helping the Brotherhood and travelling from place to place in a vertibird. You want to avoid fast travel as much as possible, and instead fly around using the minigun to eliminate any hostiles on the way. You can stay in the air whilst in a vertibird by choosing a new location to travel to from the map before the vertibird lands. With a bit of practice, and through having the right locations available on the map, you can do a ton of strafing runs on locations before you land, eliminating all hostiles who aren't in cover. Thank you all for watching this build until the end. I truly appreciate it. Make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and leave a comment below with what you thought of this build. Share this video in order to help the channel grow, and make sure to tune in to my next build. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.